Hello there. I am supposedly retired. I say supposedly because I'm still doing contract and part time work. But even when I was out in the job market and thought I was in secure positions, there was always that knowledge that I needed to be thinking about what I might need to do to look for the next job, the next career move, or in some cases, I was even the hiring manager looking at bringing somebody on board and knowing what was going on in the world of HR and in staffing and employment was always important. For some of you right now, you may be looking for a job. You may be currently employed someplace, but thinking about what else you may need to be looking for, or knowing how to operate effectively where you're at and know what your rights and your opportunities might be. Or you might be that hiring manager who's looking to bring on board the next person and how you should go about doing that effectively, efficiently, and legally. Well, we're going to be speaking with an expert today who knows all about staffing. That's her career. That's what she's been doing for a number of years. And she is really a leading expert in the field. So put on the brakes, grab a cup of coffee, and join the conversation because it's time for Coffee Breaks with Steve. Well, welcome to Coffee Breaks with Steve. My name is Steve, and this is the show where we come together around our virtual coffee table each week and join the conversation to talk about interesting topics with amazing guests. If you're with us for the first time today, welcome. And if you've been with us before, welcome back. It's another Saturday, and we're getting into that autumn weather, at least here in Spokane. We're seeing the rain, the overcast a little bit more. We're still getting some sunny weather, which is great, but just noticing a little more frequently that we are experiencing the kind of weather that we'd expect to see this kind of year. How is it where you're at? Let's see who's on here. Rick, good morning. Shalane, that's right. You are here. Kathy Garlick is here. Everybody drink. Thank you. Good morning, Carla. Another interesting conversation. Don't forget to say hi and join in here in the chat. That is exactly right. Thank you, Carissa. Our director, Carissa Wheelock, is always on the ball to make sure everybody's here and in line and doing what they need to. And Shalane's always here to make sure that what, Shalane? Rick will help out with this too, I'm sure. It's been another amazing week, and as I mentioned, I've supposedly been retired now for coming close to 4 years, which I can't believe. Part of that is because I've never really completely stopped working. I don't think. I think there was a little period of time right after I left my last full-time job in California. Carol and I moved to Washington State. And there was a period of time for both of us where we were just kind of getting settled in and getting the lay of the land and figuring out what is what. And but for the last couple years, anyway, the last 2 years for sure, I've been doing some part-time work and I've been doing some contract work. And even though I'm no longer in the job market or working full-time, either as an employee or a hiring manager, I still find it very interesting to kind of track trends, industry trends, and what works and what doesn't when you're applying for jobs. We've had topics here before where we've talked about the job market, we've talked about applying for jobs, but it's a constantly changing field. It's just something that seems to be a roller coaster ride. And so we're going to be having that conversation again today with an industry expert on staffing and employment. And there's a tremendous amount here. There were things that I was learning or things that I thought I understood that I was finding out different things about. So I think it's going to be very worthwhile. But anyway, good to have you all here. And I want to take a look at a little bit of our sweet and savory here this morning as we go to, as Shalane calls it, the charcuterie. But the first one is this, living in Spokane, a lot of people think Spokane is just a big little city or a little big city that sits on the Idaho border. When you think of Washington State, most people think of Seattle. And they don't necessarily know that Spokane has its own claims to fame. Did you know, you may already know this, but Bing Crosby basically grew up in Spokane. His family moved here when he was like 3 years old, and he remained here till he was a young adult. And Spokane continued to hold a very special place in his life throughout the remainder of his life. He would come back and visit. He was a big Gonzaga University fan and attended a lot of their alumni events, would come into town, attend some of their sporting events, etc., and used to bring his family into town as well. Well, we're now celebrating this weekend the 100th anniversary of when Bing Crosby, as a young adult, I think around 21, 22 years old, did his last local concert here in Spokane, and then with a buddy and bandmate, jumped in a car and headed to LA, which was the start of him really launching his international career. And so they are commemorating that this weekend with some special celebrations that started yesterday, are continuing through today. And we have just a little bit of a video to show you that was prepared by the city of Spokane, and just talking a little bit about what they did yesterday and about Bing Crosby's legacy here in this city. Take a look.
Mayor Lisa Brown here. What an exciting day. We're celebrating the 100th anniversary of when our own Bing Crosby performed at the Clemmer Theater right before he hit the big time and moved to Los Angeles after growing up here in Spokane. And we're unveiling Bing Crosby Way right here on Sprague Avenue across from the Bing Crosby Theater.
I am so grateful to all the people that work to continue Dad's legacy. The Bing Crosby advocates, Gonzaga, everybody is so clear about how happy they are for him to be from Spokane. And so it makes me very proud. I am very proud, but it makes me even happier.
This celebration today fits with our commitment to the arts and music. We have music venues and theaters all around us. Spokane is committed to making this a great place for musicians and other creatives to thrive.
So it is special. Rick, you were asking how many people live in Spokane. If I'm remembering correctly, the city itself is around 360,000. And greater Spokane area, we're outside the actual city limits, but we're in the Spokane metropolitan area, which goes from being metropolitan to suburban to rural very quickly, depending on which direction you go. But in the greater Spokane area right here is about 600,000, a little over 500,000. So it's, it's not a huge city, but yeah, definitely Bing Crosby is one of the claims to fame here. Very important claim to fame. And there's more stuff going on today at Gonzaga. There's actually a house on the campus now, I believe, of Gonzaga that was Bing Crosby's family home when he was growing up. And it has been turned into something of a museum. And I think it's also where the alumni center, possibly for Gonzaga University, is located. If somebody is more familiar with Gonzaga and with the Bing Crosby house, you can fill me in. I've never been to the Bing Crosby house. It's on my list. Now that we live here, why not? Why wouldn't I do that? For sure. And now I've said it here, so I think I have to do it. But yeah, very, very cool that Bing is from here, that there is a big connection to he and his family, and that his daughter and her family came back this weekend for the celebration. First time that she's been here since the late 1960s when she came with her father. So it's really cool. Hey, a couple other things. Just want to mention we're doing one more shout out. We're going to wrap it up this week in terms of trying to collect any more members for the panel that we'd like to put together sometime in the next few weeks, to do an episode here on Coffee Breaks with Steve about being involved if you are or haven't. Wait a minute. Thank you. If you are currently or have been involved in book clubs, we want to have a panel put together of people who've got that experience, who have that experience or have had that experience, who can talk about that. And it's not for any other reason, just I've never been involved in a book club. And probably some of you are in the same situation. You never have. What's it like to be part of a group that reads the same book together? You may not choose the book. It may not even be a book, an author, even a genre of or style of book that you would choose. And yet now you're going to be reading that and getting together and talking about it. What's that all about? So we're putting together this panel. We'd like to get one or two more people if we can. If you can help us get a shout out for that, or you can recommend anyone, please do. If that applies to you and you are or have been a member of a book club and you'd like to consider participating, you can send us an email at cbwsteve@comcast.net. Put book club in the subject line and let us know how to get back in touch with you, and we'll follow up, see if it works. But we're going to be doing that very soon. We do have a couple of birthdays this week. Casey Fowler, my niece Casey, celebrating a birthday on October 16th. She is one of the most special people I have ever known. And I say that because, yes, I'm prejudiced. She's my niece, but she's just also an amazing and wonderful person. Happy birthday, Casey. I hope you enjoy your special day. And then the following day on October 17th, Faith Alfer. If you were here a few months ago, Faith joined us. She is a radio personality, author, speaker, motivational speaker, actor, and with her own amazing story. And we have featured that here on the show. You can find that episode by going back on YouTube and looking for it. But Faith is celebrating a birthday this week as well on October 17th. So we wish a happy birthday to Faith Alfer. Do you have a special day this week that we did not have a chance to acknowledge because we missed it or we didn't have it in our calendar or whatever the case may be? Let us know in the chat right now so that we can celebrate and acknowledge that with you. Or maybe it's someone very special to you. Maybe you have that, your spouse, your significant other, a child, a grandchild, a distant cousin, someone that you want to make sure we celebrate. Let us know that. We'd be glad to. If you got a birthday or other special day, anniversary, or anything else coming up later this year or even into next year, and you'd like to make sure we get it on the calendar so that we can celebrate with you, you can send us an email to cbwsteve@comcast.net, and we will get it on the calendar and we will celebrate with you. Or we'll be reminded if we do forget. Boss Day is coming up, just saying. When is Boss Day, Shalane? So we make sure that we don't leave out those who are bosses, like Shalane herself is a boss. All right, make sure we know those things. Listen, I want to get on to our special guest today and our topic. This is one, lots of times I think, and recommending Steve Buscemi. Okay. I think he is a stand-up guy. Thank you. Well, would you do me a favor, Shalane? Why don't you reach out to Steve? Let him know that we want him to join us on that panel or just to come on the show, and let's get him connected, right? All right. I want to tell you about our guest. And I was going to say this first. Lots of times, I know I go into topics like this thinking this is a very specific topic, and it's not going to appeal to everyone. I'm surprised sometimes at how generally informative some of our topics are. We've had estate attorneys, we've had financial advisors, we've had people whose areas of expertise or areas of interest are very, very specific, and yet there always seems to be something that every single one of us can take away. I know that's true for me. And I want to tell you about our guest today. Leslee Brazil has worked in staffing for over 15 years, the last 8 years of that with Legend Finance and Accounting, which is a Roth staffing company. Legend places accounting and finance professionals from accounting assistants up through CFOs on a temporary to hire, and direct hire basis. Roth Staffing was founded in 1994 and has over 100 offices nationwide with multiple special brands covering almost all office needs from admin, marketing, HR, legal, technical, and many others. Outside of work, Leslee is a single mom of 9 and 11-year-old girls. They are very into theater and she is the designated costume mom and was recently leading a team of 6 in her girls' most recent show. Carol and I were very involved in our kids' theater programs when they were growing up, and Carol was also one of the costume moms. Leslee loves to volunteer and teaches children in kindergarten through 5th grade each Sunday at church. In addition, when she has free time, Leslee enjoys playing softball. So, diverse individual with some great things to share. Enjoy my conversation with Leslee Brazil. Leslee, welcome to Coffee Breaks with Steve. Thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
We talk about issues around things like staffing and employment. First of all, I think it's interesting to find out, how did you end up in a career involving staffing? What led you to that career?
That is such an interesting question. Not to age myself, but back when I was in college, I was working part-time at a staffing firm as just a receptionist, and I fell in love with industry. And when I graduated college, I ended up going permanent at that company. And this is where I age myself, is that this was back when 9/11 happened and then the dot-com busted. And I was starting to be trained to do the sales and the recruiting. I was the lead receptionist for 2 separate offices, but they were laying off even the top performers. So there's no way they were going to promote me to move into a staffing role. Yeah. So I got out of staffing at that time for many years, and I just never felt fulfilled. Like, I knew that was my calling. I absolutely love helping people. I love, you're helping the people find jobs. You're helping companies fill their needs that they need. And so you're just all around just helping people in general. And I felt like it was my calling. So I wanted to get back into it. And so I got back into it in 2011. And so I have now over 15 years in staffing.
You talk about things like changes that took place after 9/11. We obviously saw things happen with COVID. And I'm just wondering whether, because of some of those events that have taken place over the period of time, or just in general, how have you seen trends in staffing, in the hiring process, change and evolve over the course of your career?
No, that's a great question. I feel like and if you talk to anyone in staffing, you'll find out that staffing is like a roller coaster. There's ups and there's downs. You will come into work one day and there's a high, and then all of a sudden something happens, you're all the way back down. And it's the same thing with the economy. There's times where I remember when I got back into staffing in 2011, unemployment rates were at like 13, 14%. Mm-hmm. You have people I just had this conversation with my team today. I literally had people applying to jobs, not because they wanted to work with me, not because they didn't even want to meet with me. They didn't even want to work. They simply needed to put on their unemployment application that they had applied to a job. Yeah. And then you get to the point where you have people who are desperately actually wanting jobs. And then you had 2020 when everyone got laid off. And so I feel like obviously there's just ebbs and flows, just like in the economy and anything that there is in.
Yeah. You see those ebbs and flows. And one of the things that I've noticed now, I retired a few years ago, whatever that means, but I can recall in the last few years before that, in different situations where I was applying for jobs, or even in situations where I was working for companies or organizations where I was the one doing the hiring, that the things that we were looking at on resumes, the things that we were approaching in interviews and in that process also seemed to change. And I'm thinking about things like the format of resumes, which seems to constantly, you get used to saying, this is how I'm going to present my resume. And then it's like, no, that's not what we're looking for now. We want the resume formatted this way. Or you get into an interview process, and the way that it's approached, instead of just saying, let's talk about your skills, it's also getting more sometimes into questions that have to do with, I don't know if personality is the right word, but culture fit and those types of things. And I'm curious about how you've seen some of that change and adapt over the years.
Oh, yeah. So I could talk about that for like an hour and a half. But yeah. So first and foremost, I think one of the biggest changes is pre-COVID, resumes were like 1 page. You might see 2 pages. And I think, to be honest, if I think about it, it's probably because people were still printing out resumes. It's a waste of paper. As we got into, more virtual and people are just looking at stuff online and they're not necessarily printed out resumes. So you're not wasting all the paper when you're printing out, you're going into an interview with 6 people and you print out a resume for every single person. And
Right.
it's multiple pages. That's a lot of paper. Now, I rarely see a resume at 1 page. It's really 2, 3 pages. And I think that's probably the biggest shift. And when I have someone who's entering the workforce for the first time that is just got laid off or whatever, switching jobs for the first time in like 6, 7 years, you'll see them with a 1-page resume. And I have to tell them it's more important for, especially since AI, that's another big thing. It's like AI is kind of taking over. So when you're applying to jobs, AI is almost filtering almost all the resumes before it even gets to the recruiter. And so if you're not getting through AI, you're not getting through, to even the recruiter, right? So making sure that my biggest tips that I give people is making sure you gear your resume toward the job. And that's use AI to your benefit because you actually have AI help you. But you really need to be putting softwares. You need to be putting industries. If someone says, I need someone who does this, make sure that's on your resume. You want to make sure that it's really highlighted on your resume.
You talked about AI, and you said, using AI to help. Have you seen a lot more of that? And, even with it, since even COVID, I've seen a lot more where there are tools, Chat GPT and other tools that people are utilizing that are even geared, say, here's my background, put together a well-versed resume. Are you seeing more of that? And is it possible to tell as you're seeing those, can you tell that somebody has used AI to put together a resume, or is it just, hey, this is nice, this is a good looking resume?
Sometimes. And here's the thing to know about AI is AI actually makes grammatical errors. They make spelling errors.
Yeah.
And so I'm a big Friends fan. So some people get this reference, some people don't. But I always say, don't Joey Tribbiani your resume. Like you might put in Chat GPT, here's my resume, here's the job description, gear my resume toward the job description, which I actually encourage people to do. But once you do that, you need to proofread it. You need to go over it with a fine-tooth comb, and make sure that you're checking it out because there could be anything on it. And then in addition to that, Chat GPT might be like, oh, well, they were looking for this. Like when Joey he put French on his resume and he doesn't even know French, right? So you need to make sure that you don't have something on your resume that you didn't want to do. You don't want to lie, but you do want to gear your resume. So I always say use AI to help you. You can go onto AI now and say, I have an interview tomorrow at, here's the company name.
Yeah.
I have an interview with this person and here's the job description. Can you help me prepare for this interview? And AI can literally just walk you through all the things. So I always tell people, yes, AI can hurt you if you're not using it correctly, but it could also really help you if you know how to use it.
It's using it as a tool rather than counting on it to do the work for you.
Right. And it could do the work for you, but you just have to double check it. I use AI all the time. Like I have it up on, I have 2 different versions of AI. My company actually even came out with our own personal AI just for our company. And so we use it to help write ads. We help it to write, so use it to your benefit, but also know that if AI is screening, you also want to make sure that you're getting through the AI to get to an actual human.
Leslee, going back to the early days of when I was in the job market, you were sort of planning on staying at a company, if not for your whole career, at least for a period of a number of years.
Yeah.
And if I, as a potential employer, was looking at a resume where there seemed to be people who were going from job to job every year or so, it's like, oh, they're flaky. But things have changed over the years. We don't necessarily see that, but I think there are also assumptions, kind of leading up to the fact that I've seen a lot of things written in articles and a lot of people that I talked to as I was in the workplace as a hiring manager who were like, this younger generation, they have no loyalty. They don't have a good work ethic. They kind of come in and they're just there for the paycheck, and half the time they're not even really doing the job. They just don't even understand what it means to be loyal to the job or the company. And I'm wondering if that has been your experience as you deal with different generations. Are you seeing differences? Do you think that some of those assumptions or presumptions are correct? Or what is your approach to that, and what have you seen?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a generational thing. I do see a lot of job hoppers, and I will say clients still want someone with good tenure. But if it's just something that you don't particularly like, I almost have to look at people and say, I get that, but you just left a job 6 months ago. So now you almost have to stick this out for 2 years because you can't. And it's sad to say that I need at least 2 years on your resume. Really, ideally, like you need more. Like I've been at my company for over 8 years, which is uncommon. But my father also worked for his company for over 40 years before he retired. And so I see that as like, and I told myself when I started working at this company at Legend, I said, I'm not leaving until I retire. Like this is my home, and I'm very happy with the choice I made. But I'm also very blessed to be in a situation where I'm not unhappy. Like I am very happy. I love my company. And so I get that. And I know that's very important, but that's why I also stress to applicants that when you are interviewing, you absolutely have to make sure it's the right fit for you.
Yes.
Like if you see a red flag, it's almost like a relationship. If you see a red flag, you need to run. Like don't take a job just because you need a job, because you need to stay at that job for at least 3-4 years. Otherwise you look like a job hopper on your resume. Yeah. So I don't know if it's necessarily, here's what I will also say with the generation thing, is I see it for all generations. So I don't necessarily see that in just one generation. I will say that employers and companies will get the phone call and we'll hear them say, I want this. And I have to tell them, I'm going to find you the best qualified candidate. Like I'm not going to find you a certain, type of individual based on, whatever they're saying that is basically illegal. But what I do tell my candidates is that you need to put your resume where you cannot be discriminated against. So some of the top things that I tell people, don't put anything on your resume more than 20 years ago. If you have, when you have your degree, take the dates off your degree. And unless you're a recent college grad who has no other experience on your resume, so you have to put like, I don't have experience because I just graduated. But even so, even for recent college grads, I still say the same thing, take it off, because then people might look at, because if you have good experience, but you also just graduated, people will look at you and say, well, again, people might just start to judge. And I will say that what I have found over probably the last 5-6 years is the number one discriminating factor in the workforce is ageism when it comes to hiring.
With, you talked about the longevity and not job hopping. Do you have advice that you give to people who may be coming back into the workforce? Maybe they've had a gap or gaps for any number of reasons, or you do see that there have been more frequent job hopping situations. Is there something that you can coach them to do to begin to change that pattern or to get back into the workforce?
Yes. So my number one thing, especially if they're either entering and haven't worked in a while or have no experience because they didn't do an internship or whatever, is to go contact nonprofits and ask them if you can volunteer. And this is like probably my number one tip, because here's the thing. If you put on your resume, I'm an accounting assistant in the accounting department at ABC company, and it's a nonprofit. An employer, when you're applying, does not know if that's 1 hour a day, 1 hour a week, or 8 hours a day. It just shows that you're currently working and you have recent experience. And it helps you to kind of get your wheels turning and get you experience as well. Yeah. And most nonprofits are open to volunteering. You have to be open to volunteering. You have to be open to like not getting paid for this. But if you really want to entice your resume, or like, for example, we do have working moms. In fact, my clients actually love returning moms into the workforce. Sometimes their salary is a little bit lower. They just, and they're okay with that. They're like, they're done raising their children. They want to get back to work. I actually have not had a problem re-entering a parent back into the workforce, to be honest. But I would definitely say that the volunteer is probably the number one advice I give to mainly more the recent college grads, because they're like, I don't have experience. What do I do? Nonprofit organizations love people who wants to come in and help, or reach out to someone that who might be in the industry or a functional role that you want to get into. So if you want to get into accounting, maybe ask parents, friends, or whatever, an accounting manager or controller, can I come in just once a week to do data entry or file or touch something, and just come in and just say, I don't need to be paid. I just want to come in and come help and be a little helper. I mean, I think the same thing could be true if someone is returning to the workforce and is having a hard time. But I think the difference is with parents who are returning to the workforce, or maybe they just took a gap and got laid off and had a hard time finding work, is most people are involved, especially if they have children. They're involved in like, maybe they're sports, maybe they're involved with, maybe they're the team mom, maybe they're involved with the PTA or the PFC
Right.
or whatever they call it at their school. And so I see that a lot, like leader of a Girl Scout troop, or, volunteer with the Girl Scout troop or Boy Scout, or, whatever. Like I see it all over the resumes, and it shows that you're currently doing something. So
Yes.
I think that volunteer piece is actually huge.
Yeah. For a moment, this just popped into my head, Leslie, and I'm curious. I refer to it sometimes as the unicorn factor, where you look at a job posting and a job description and the qualifications that an employer is looking for, and it looks like, they need a unicorn to apply for this. And I'm going, I think I fit this, but I don't have every single line item on there. I don't have every single piece of experience. I don't have the exact qualifications or degree that they're looking for. Should I apply for that job anyway if I think that I've got what it takes to do that job and it looks like someplace that I would want to be?
I will always say 100% yes. However, here's the thing. This is the one thing about this market right now, is clients are being extremely picky on what they want. They do want all those things. Here's what I would say. If you do not have everything that they're looking for, because they want that unicorn, make sure you have highlighted the things that you do have that they're looking for. Mm-hmm. And I tell people, I'm not kidding, physically take the highlighter in Word, like physically highlight it. If they want a specific software, highlight it on your resume. If they want a specific industry, highlight it on your resume. If it's like something that you've done, like maybe an ROI, like return on investment that you have accomplished, highlight that on your resume. Show them why. You basically have to say, this is why you should hire me, even though I'm missing this X piece. And you don't want to call out that you don't have that X piece. What you want to do is that you want to call out all the other things and make sure it's very, very apparent that you have all the other things. Yeah. If you're missing just that one or two things. Yeah. But I will say, I know, because I have candidates who come to me, and we fill jobs like that all the time, even as a recruiter. Like, they're paying us a fee for someone who doesn't have, they ideally wanted all of the stuff, but then they meet with someone and they're like, they're missing that one thing. Let me at least talk to them. And all of a sudden they fall in love with the person and they hire it. So 100%, like, I will say, if you don't meet any of them and you want the job, it's a different story. I do have people who are completely out of the realm. Like, I'll have, people applying to jobs that are not even close. Like, they have not even done not one thing on the resume. And that's where you do want to be careful, because what happens is, on that part, is if it's completely out of the realm, but you just want to work at that company, or you just want that job, you like these unicorn ones where you qualify, but you're missing one or two things. However, what we want to be careful of is that, say it's like a level up or 2 levels up, and you're like, I would love to have that job one day. Let me apply. What happens is that once you have your resume in the database for that company, if something was to come up that actually fit your actual background, you're not going to get called, because they already exited you out from the position that you applied that you weren't qualified for.
Right.
So that's the one thing I would just make sure that you're, if it's like, say, I'm a senior accountant, but I don't have the software, I don't have this one job duty, that's one thing. But if you're a senior accountant and you're trying to apply for a controller role, but then a senior accountant role opens up, then you're not going to be, they won't even see your resume, because they've already thrown it away from when you applied for the position you didn't qualify for.
Are you seeing any specific sectors that seem to be very strong right now in terms of hiring, or any that are becoming weaker over time?
I will say, again, it's ebbs and flows, right? So I would say, I particularly, and this started probably in 2020, I've gotten into working a lot with construction companies. And with construction companies, sometimes they do really well, sometimes they don't. And with construction companies, it's also very broad. Like, sometimes engineering might be doing really well, but like home building's not. Like right now, home building's not doing that great because of the mortgage and all that kind of stuff. But construction overall is doing fine, but depending on what sector of construction. So I would say construction is one that, depending on what it is, We work with garbage services. I will say that we always like make the joke of garbage services are obviously something that they always need help with. Like even during 2020, it's not like, the garbage event, we're still out picking up the trash. And so that's definitely one that is not going to go away. We see it here in the Bay Area. I will say, because we put out salary guides and it shows all the top industries and mid-year market reports. But what we're seeing here in the Bay Area in accounting and finance specifically is construction is doing well, food manufacturing, anything food related is doing well, manufacturing in general, nonprofit organizations. And again, nonprofit is the hit or miss depending on, with everything going on in the world. Some nonprofits are doing great, like more of the housing ones are doing good, and healthcare and property management are doing. However, 2020 property management was not doing so well. And so I think it's just like ebbs and flows. And I know for me, I want to find a company where, when I left the staffing firm that one time and I had to bid up when I wasn't working in staffing, I unfortunately had a company that, went under, and then I had another company that went bankrupt. And so I found myself in that little loop of like, I only had 2 years here and then 3 years here and then 3 years here. And I kept getting laid off. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm being categorized as that job hopper and I don't want to. So it was important to me to find a company who was stable and find an industry that was stable. So I think in general, when someone's doing research, if that's important to them, because again, we talked earlier about people who do want to move every 2-3 years and people just get bored and that's what they do, which is fine. They just have to know that some employers don't like that on their resume. But if you are someone who wants to stay at a company long term, make sure you look at the financials, make sure you pull up the company's financial information, make sure you're asking those questions, make sure you really think through if this is an industry that is sustainable during tough times, and a good question to ask these companies during 2020, when it was a little rough, what did your company do? How did your company survive? What did your company implement? Like, I know my company, they put in like different tools into action to make us succeed when other companies were laying off. And so we continued to grow, and we can, I always say the Netflix versus Blockbuster. Like, you want to work with a Netflix. You don't want to work at a Blockbuster when times changed and they did not pivot and then they all went out of business.
Yeah.
If anyone remembers, I don't know, Netflix, when they first started, we just had those red envelopes. We would literally get mailed envelopes and we would mail them back. And then it got to a point where we could take the envelopes to the Safeways and we could take the envelopes and drop them off. And then all of a sudden we don't even mail stuff. Everything's on the TV. And they just kept adjusting. Netflix just kept moving and migrating. And Blockbuster, I think they just closed their last final store that was really just open for, nostalgic reasons. But you want to find those companies and ask those questions of what they're doing when times are rough to pivot and adjust. And my company is doing that. And I'm very thankful. But a lot of companies, it doesn't. So, and it's interesting because it doesn't necessarily matter the industry. I think it matters sometimes how the company is going to handle it when bad things happen. Because, Netflix could have went out of business too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you look at that and you see
their whole entire model.
And I think it's important as well with that. What you're saying is not only look at those companies, but you got to take the time to do your research. Look at the histories. We've got so many available tools now online to take a look at and research the companies that we're thinking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Leslee, as we wrap this up, do you have any final thoughts, any final advice, or anything else that comes to mind that you think it's important for people to know?
I have a lot that I actually wrote down. I'm going to try to go over this super quick.
Betcha. You go with your list.
When writing your resume, just number one, don't overcomplicate it. Keep it simple, but make sure you're gearing your resume. I think we went over that. But I think one thing that just came up, I was asking my team, I told them I was going to be doing this. And I said, what is your advice? And I was like, that's a really good point. We're in a life right now where we get telemarketers all the time. And so you pick up the phone and you're irritated. It's annoying to get these telemarketer calls. But here's the thing. You pick up the phone and you think it's a telemarketer, and it's not. It's a future employer. It's someone that you sent your resume to, and you have an attitude. You're kind of snarky. And then the person on the phone goes, oh, this is Leslee from Legend. And then all of a sudden their whole demeanor change. Don't forget that this is your first impression.
Yeah.
And I don't think we think about that. I think just this week, I've had my coworkers say, I've had so many people just be so rude to me. I call them and they just think I'm a telemarketer and they're so rude to me. And then they realize who I am. And so I think it's just a good reminder to not do that. And with that also too, is we get all the time, I'm so sorry, I've applied to a lot of jobs. What job was this for? Like, make sure you're keeping track of like where you're applying. Make a list. Do not tell someone I've been applying to a lot of jobs. We get this a lot actually. And people just don't know. And you should be keeping track of where you applied anyways. But even if you don't know, wait till they get off the phone and then go look on their website or go on LinkedIn to see what they have posted, to see what you might have applied for versus being like, I've applied to everything. Reference letters and recommendations is my other key point, is that people always ask, what is one thing? This is probably my biggest thing. There's so many things I could tell people to make sure they're prepared for interviews and doing all the things. But what is one thing that you can do to put you above and beyond somebody else is when you're applying to jobs, include recommendation letters. Ask your previous employers to write recommendation letters, include them. Because, it is good always to have these are my references that you can call, but it's even better because they're not going to call unless they're ready to hire you. But if you include the letter of recommendation, they'll look at that right when you send your resume.
That could be a game changer.
It really can. But yeah, just, top things, simple things like making sure your grammar on your resume, which I know that we spoke about earlier, gearing your resume, adding the industries, adding the software, and just preparing for the interview. If it's a video call, I cannot tell you how many times I've gone on video calls and someone's audio doesn't work. Their video doesn't work. Make sure you check this ahead of time. If they've given you the link most likely ahead of time. I don't care. I will see people click on the link and I never think that, I need to go in this meeting. I know that person's checking it to make sure that person's prepared for when I meet with them, which I appreciate.
Yes.
So make sure you're doing that, because it happens a lot where you'll get on and you're like, I am so sorry, I'm having audio problems. No. Go figure that out before you get on the call. Make sure you're dressed professionally, head to toe, even if they can't see you head to toe, just in case. I've had laptops fall down and you'd be surprised in things I've seen. So just make sure you're fully dressed from head to toe and prepare yourself for the interview. I think one of the biggest things that I hear about interviews is a company will say, what do you know about me? And then a candidate will be like, they don't even know what the company does.
Right.
So it just goes back to me making sure you're prepared. I do a lot of videos on these myself. So I mean, like I said, I could talk hours on this particular topic, but those would be my top takeaways for being prepared with your resume and interviews.
It's such excellent advice. Every one of those just checks a box that has been part of my own experience. Well, Leslee, thank you so much for taking the time to join us, for sharing such valuable information, and for all that you do in your work to try to help connect the right people to the right employers and vice versa.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate you inviting me.
All right. I'm just curious, and you can put this in the comments if you'd like. I'm just curious about how did this resonate with you out there as viewers? I know that some of you are coming from situations where you're still actively in employment situations. Maybe you are, or you know somebody who is or will be looking for a job. Was there information here that you were going, oh man, this is applicable? Maybe you are a manager and even doing some hiring. Were there things in what Leslee shared that you can take away from this? I always like to know that, because I want to make sure that the topics that we are sharing, the guests that we bring on here, have relevance to the people who are taking the time to tune in. You're around our virtual coffee table, so let us know. Carla, I'm with you. There were certain elements of this that, and again, there are things that change as time goes by. Video interviews was not really a thing that was that prevalent. It happened before COVID, but I had a job that I acquired during COVID, a few months into COVID, where I was reached out to and asked if I was interested. I went through all of the interview process, most of the onboarding, and the first several months primarily working remotely, and everything was being done via video. And I was only in the office, I think, one time during the initial onboarding process. And other than that, I didn't go to the office for several months. And so the video process in applying for jobs and interviewing and presenting yourself is a big change. Shalane, you mentioned the idea of, you haven't seen any multiple page resumes. I thought that was an interesting thing. We went from, put all of your experiences forever on a resume, no matter how long, down to the 1-page resume a number of years back. And now it's kind of, things move and change. But I do wonder how much of this you find relevant and even interesting. And if not for yourself, is it information that you can see yourself passing along to somebody? It is for me. It's stuff that I've already shared some of this information. After I had the conversation with Leslee, I was talking to someone, a colleague who I know who is in the process, and I shared some of the key things and encouraged her to tune in and watch this episode when she has a chance. So anyway, it's good stuff. Hey, listen, we're at that time. I do want to share some things that are going to be coming up, and we've got a few already kind of ready to go. I want to share some things that we're going to be sharing with you on coffee breaks in the coming weeks. Take a look at this.
And because I'm often, I am in sessions and in the studio most days of my life, so I don't think it's productive for me to only want to work one way, because I need to be able to pull out ideas all the time. So I think naturally, when I first started writing songs when I was 6 or something, it very much was lyrics and melody at the same time. It all kind of comes to me at once. But I would say now it depends on how I'm working, because sometimes I'll make a beat and I'll produce something and then I'll write to that. Sometimes I'll have a melody idea. Sometimes I'll have a lyric idea. Usually I find that they kind of coincide with each other.
And it is a lot of work. There's a weekend every year when I think we are never going to get this done.
And he always says, we're not doing this next year.
We're not doing this next year. I can't believe that I'm still doing this. This is crazy. Things aren't working the way they should, and I'm just desperate. And that, I think, last year was when our friends took a little pity on us. And I was like, can you help with this? Can you help with that? And they said, oh, sure. And they were starting to get into it. So I'm hoping that they will not have been deterred after last year's experience. I think they're good to do it again this year.
20% is your personality and your character, and then 80% is work. So it's a little bit also for me with sport, yes, but so we need the very skilled body to play the piano, especially the whole body, because we see that pianist is playing with fingers, but the fingers are the end of the whole machine, yes, which is playing. So the whole body is involved in playing.
I enjoy the fact, did you notice that most of the people you just saw in the previews had accents that were not distinctly American? I like that. It's always kind of fun when we have people coming from different countries and different places on the show, and that's going to be part of this. A couple other things that are coming up. We are going to be revisiting artificial intelligence. Interesting that came up as part of today's topic in talking about the job search process and how artificial intelligence, things like ChatGPT, can enter into that. We're gonna revisit from a conversation that Carissa had with Christopher a few weeks ago, and there were just things that we didn't get a chance to cover. They didn't get a chance to cover, so we're going to revisit that. And then we have another amazing individual coming on the show, Ilyasha Pete. Illy is she is a leader in the community. In her community, she leads nonprofit organizations. She leads community groups. She is an author of a book that was recently published called Glass Ceilings, Fragile Ground, which talks about, again, comes back to trying to pursue your career and other life priorities when sometimes you have things working against you. As you can see, Illy is a Black woman, and she talks in here about leadership principles from the perspective of someone who had to overcome obstacles to pursue the things that she has been doing and been exceptionally successful at. You will want to be here for that. And then, as we mentioned, we are going to be doing the book club panel. We're going to be wrapping up our outreach to try to find people to participate and actually putting that together very soon. So stay tuned as we share more information about that one. What are the topics you'd like to discuss? Who are the guests you'd like to see on this show? We talked about that we want it to always be relevant, exciting, fun. Yes, Chelan, if you can get Steve Buscemi, get him, bring him. But if you have ideas or you would like to make an introduction, email us at cbwsteve@comcast.net. Share those ideas. Make those introductions to people you know who you think would be a great guest and could share a fantastic topic. And then a reminder that we do also have a YouTube page, a YouTube channel. And some people who can't tune in for this chat live go there. And that's the best place to go and to invite people to go to see some of these episodes. The people who are job searching right now that didn't get a chance to be here, send them to YouTube and they will find this entire conversation with Leslee Brazil there. So if you are already subscribed, if you're not already subscribed, subscribe, please, and watch and like our videos. If you are already subscribed, would you share the YouTube channel with your friends, your family, the people in your networks who really would benefit from being able to be a part of the conversations with our amazing topics and guests. There were a couple of things that I did want to share at the end here. I was going to share a little bit before, and that is we want to share, Leslee talked about, got things in the way, talked about her LinkedIn channel, and that's where her videos are. She was talking about she has a lot of instructional videos out there with great tips. If you go to the link that we've just shared, you can even scan it with your phone right now on the screen. That is one way that you can find even more of what Leslee has to share that I think is amazing and important. I've watched her videos and it's just as good, if not better, than what I put together with her here. The other thing I want to do on Leslee's behalf is put in a plug for her the company that she works for, Legend Finance and Accounting. And first of all, because we want to say thank you that Leslee was able to join us from her office and share information. She also talked about what Legend does and the company that Legend is a part of. And so we want to share their information. Again, maybe you or someone you know would like more information about placement services, recruiting services for a job that you're interested in, know how to connect best, or maybe your company is looking for someone who might fit one of those categories. You can, once again, use the link that we have shared or scan the QR code. I know I'm going to need more coffee. Scan the QR code to get more information about Legend as well. All right. Listen, I want to thank you for being here today. I want to thank you for taking the time to share your experiences and to be part of this conversation. One more big shout out to Leslee Brazil for taking the time to share so much great information and advice with us. Thank you, Leslee. And thank you to all of you. And remember, we all have ways of touching lives. Some people like Leslee Brazil are making sure that people can connect with the right jobs and employers can connect with the right people. We all have skills. We all have abilities. We all have opportunities. So please find a way to make a difference in your world this week. God bless you. Have a great week. We'll see you next time on Coffee Breaks with Steve.